Okay, well, back to the groceries. I'm afraid I have to conclude, even with my dyslexic math, if you will. I don't think the prices are coming down. Isn't that strange? I know I'm an incurable optimist when it comes to this, but I'll look at the bottom line. I'm going to show you my usual. I'll show you what we've actually got. Okay, got cheese there, Skyflakes, got some new toothbrushes, a little bit of fruit. I got this, this is coconut milk, Coco Mama, toilet paper, a little bit of fruit, as I said. I got some baked beans, and then the rest is actually meat. But the meat now, as I'm going to share with you, it has actually, I don't notice that we are eating a whole lot more. It's not like we're getting incredible value for what we've got, as opposed to the 50% prices that I swear we were paying some time ago. Now, unfortunately, I can't compare the prices, because if you look here, you can see, let me see, there. Doesn't matter that it's upside down. You can see that the prices are in black ink, so you can see it. What I found is that it's the bookkeeper's nightmare. The ink does not last. It fades. Not sure whether this, what the purpose is behind this, but on this paper and with this ink, it fades. A week later, you can't see it to compare. So I can't look at this week. It says on the date 08/10/25, and even the time and the invoice, but I can't look on this one. If I put this away for 2 weeks and try to compare the prices, I won't be able to do it. So here is the villain. Okay, now we are getting more meat, and that one is $1.94. So you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 5 lots of meat, and some of it is slightly more expensive, like this, because this is not pork on the bone. So even though it's slightly lighter, the price is not any less. Let me see what the price is there. Well, the price is so mutilated I can't actually see it. So in desperation, I'll have to look at the bill. So the big prices, they're all up in the last lot. It was the last thing that she put through the till. So $2.40, that's pork bones. The cut small pack, $1.93, $1.59, $2.02, $1.78, $1.94. So you can see the prices. What I used to expect that I was going to crack over 100. So the prices were usually about 130, 140, and now I'm not surprised when I see that they're double. That one is 194. What's this one here? Yeah, you see that's 240. So the prices are varying a lot. I don't think it's not in the smaller stuff. I got now they've realized they try to sell synthetic organic honey. No, that's not a joke. Synthetic organic honey, and it didn't go too well. Nobody bought it. I think nobody bought it. So I don't know whether it had Bill Gates' name on it, but it probably had it on the bottom where it should belong. Anyway, so we're looking at, we got we got some canned food, because when the kids come round at the weekend, if there's nothing else and they want lunch or late breakfast, they can have corned beef, they can have sardines, they can have baked beans. Of course, they won't have baked beans because that's foreigner food. So everything else you've seen before, and nothing has changed there. And I wanted to slip in to be able to talk about some other things. And if you think I'm being a little bit melodramatic by saying I've got to talk about other things in the guise of talking over the groceries, then you really haven't been catching up on the news. And I'm not in a hurry to get, how do they put it? A strike. What they do is they put a strike against you. Now, bear in mind that there's a lady, mother of children, in the UK, and she is currently in prison for something that she said online, which she retracted within a very short time. She repented, if you wish. She realized that, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Well, when you think about America and what those, I'll call them people on The View, are saying about presidents and vice presidents and all kinds of people doing important jobs for the American people, and they'll say the most outrageous things, then simply put a retraction on it, sometimes as many as 4 in the program, you'll realize that the UK is, well, let me put it this way, about the next step down on their censoring would be to take people's mouth. You can't pray in your thought about the wrong things. All these things are being legislated against, and we are in very difficult times, and sooner or later we will have to stand up. It doesn't affect us in the Philippines at the moment, but what's going on, if you haven't been watching too much, and it's difficult to watch, but if you haven't been watching too much, you'll know that there is, in the same way that there is the Catholic religion in the Philippines, the Catholic religion in the Philippines is the accepted dominant religion. It is willing to integrate with all other religions. It's willing to worship side by side. But what's been happening is a couple of things. If I just say the phrase, and you should be able to connect the dots: open borders, somebody financing people to go and make trouble at otherwise peaceful demonstrations, protests. Another book opposite, and not certainly in stature to the Holy Bible, but is regarded as being the same to a great number of people. That is not a religion which will exist side by side, and they say this. They actually say this. There are plenty of videos on YouTube which will tell you exactly what is going to happen. And a little while ago, I think it was either 21 or 22, probably 21. I saw 22, but it was corrected. And they were asked to renounce their faith. And they were believers in Jesus Christ, and they were asked to renounce their faith. And they chose not to. And they were beheaded. Nowadays, you're not allowed to use certain words. Ironically, as we are all grown up in the room, you're not allowed to say things like dead. You're not allowed to say dead. You have to say unalive. if it wasn't the thin edge of the wedge on the most ridiculous kind of censorship that the world has ever seen, I would be laughing out loud. You're not allowed to say dead. You've got to say unalived. He's been unalived. And you'll see quite prominent vloggers, not little tin pot people like me and Beth, are quite important with over 1 million subscribers, and they are unafraid. They're afraid to say things, and they have to convert it to unalive. Now this was always very much within the expertise and I always think talent that the Americans have. The Americans are very talented at making things not quite so offensive. Things like let me see, it was not. I know that it was in. I'm thinking of the real word. You see, that's why I'm stuttering. It's not just old age. But instead of people who were only spectators getting accidentally killed or unalived, they were collateral damage. So, in other words, when the president was shot on that particular occasion and went down, around him there was collateral damage. And no, it really wasn't funny. Families, I think, I'm not quite sure, I think that one person I know died and others were injured because they were in close proximity to the president. But that is called collateral damage. And if an assassin, of course, we don't have assassins in the UK. We'll never do anything so un-British, or in America. But if anybody was sent out to unalive somebody and not in collateral damage, it would be called terminating with extreme prejudice. Doesn't that have a lovely, almost industrially poetic sound to it? He was terminated with extreme prejudice. Yes, and they've got words for everything. You know. Now the Aussies also have words for everything, but theirs are usually in fun. So instead of going to the toilet, they say, "I'm going to point Percy at the porcelain." What's the other one? I remember when I worked for a little while in a car company in Australia, when I went there and lived there for nearly 6 months. I loved it and would have stayed, absolutely loved it and would have stayed. But the other guys on the sales team asked me if I would like a takeaway. And of course, you wouldn't believe the things that I've seen as a musician, and yet I've remained relatively naive. I said, "Of course, what are we having, Chinese or Indian?" And they said, "No, not quite that kind of takeaway." And it would be the takeaway that walks in on a shapely pair of legs on probably stiletto heels and then does the rounds of everybody. What they used to call in the UK going 2s up or 3s up or 4s up. Not a terribly nice thing to talk about, you know. But when I was a musician, and it's only several hundred years ago, I was a professional musician, and some of the things that I saw in the dressing room were for some strange reason, if someone is on a stage, no matter what, if they're on stage doing anything, they gain a certain amount of charisma, and would altitude be the right word? But they are sought after by certain ladies of limited intelligence, I feel, and certainly very extremely low ethics, and as people as such as myself who are not interested in doing that in a public place, I used to have to turn my view into my trombone case, where important deeds and actions had to be taken care of on my trombone. But I'd hear people in the background doing their thing, and the one that always stayed with me, that used to make my friends Martin and Celia laugh, was the woman that was performing some kind of service action, and I heard her say, "Here, it tastes funny, what you got on it?" Heaven knows what she could have been doing. But anyway, apparently it tasted funny, and that caused her to ask the question. I think she still managed to get everything done. We can only assume. But anyway, that's when things were not censored. There's no censoring in the band room. There's no censoring at grassroots level. But what's happening now is that we literally cannot say anything with with certain religious words in them. You know, you can go and you can go to England or go to America, you can burn a flag there, you know, because people are being taught that these things are symbols of what should be burned and finished. It's not without some irony that the people that are talking the most about, with their t-shirts doing most of the talking, about how they are in favour of that little postage stamp of land called Gaza, and they are protesting what is going on there. And of course these are very staunch critics standing up for what they believe is right, the gays and the LGBT, Q, S, F, L, N, whatever comes after. And it ain't right, and it'll have to stop. But listen, here's a couple of light-hearted things to end off, okay? When you start a channel, there's two things you've got to be careful of. For straight away, if you raise your head above, these wonderful sayings are always credited to China, as they used to say in China. And I'm not sure that they should get the credit for them. Sometimes I think that we thought of a few good things ourselves. But one that I remember was, if the nail sticks out above the board, it will get hammered down. And that's true, isn't it? If there is a nail and it's sticking out a little bit, somebody will get it hammered and hammer that sucker down. The symbolism is fairly straightforward on that. You raise your head above and start to do anything, it immediately gets everybody's back up. When we were doing our thing, we thought we could help, and why would anybody, thinking very naively, why would anybody stop us? We're helping, for God's sake. No, you can't. Just all very well. It's all very well you saying that you're helping, and those people should have a house because that's 5 kids that are sitting out in the rain. But where's your license? was the very thing. And we were hounded and badgered and harassed and taken to court and threatened with deportation. I'm not kidding about these things. If you have the patience, you can go back among 22,000 videos that we've made, and you can find these things where I opened, the one where I opened the subpoena, where we were being called to court. It's all there. But anyway, so I forgot to put that on the list. Don't help unless you have a license. Do you know, I actually asked, when I heard that, I said to one official, one government official, wait a minute, are you telling me that if I came back from America after a trip there, and just by chance, Lady Luck had shined on me, and or God had blessed me with one of those mega dollar hits on the lotto, 200, I could come back with $200 million. That's times 58, for God's sake. And I said, are you telling me that I couldn't just give that person there a house if I wanted to? Or that one, a house or a car? Or I said, no, certainly not. There's the paperwork to be done. What's happened to humanity? Anyway, the one that's top of the list that people keep coming on about is telling me to put my shirt on. I live in a place that is not close to the beach, but certainly close enough to the lifestyle. Daily I see men walking around with no shirt. I see them with their t-shirt rolled up under their chin and a huge belly which is trying to cool down as much as possible, and nobody gives a crap. But when I'm seen without my shirt, it does cause people to say, dress up, you're a Christian. In America, they used to have a saying where they would say, when they were trying to work out whether something was right or wrong, they'd say, would Jesus do it? And of course, if Jesus wouldn't do it, then you could rely on it being the wrong thing. But anyway, so apparently, to be a good Christian, I can't go around without my shirt off. Oh well. Now listen to the few things. I got to do this quick now. We're up in 23 minutes. Heavens above, I try to be short, but I can't. So I'm too old, so I shouldn't drive. I shouldn't ride my bike. I shouldn't ride my motorcycle. And I shouldn't do the resort project. Why on earth would you, at your age, think of doing that? Why don't you live within your means? Of course, it turned out it's a hobby horse of mine. The person who is telling me to live within my means, as we live here debt-free, not responsibilities-free, but debt-free, has got a mortgage. She pays income tax. She pays every kind of tax in America, if that was where she was calling from. She has a car payment, and she probably, statistically, has around 10,000 outstanding in credit card debt, which, when I first came and first got together with Beth, I said, no credit cards. What did I say? Before we even met face to face, I said, I better tell you now that I am what many would call a boring old fart. Hands up. I don't drink, having seen, and I've just written a long response to a friend subscriber who wrote to me and mentioned about this. I don't drink alcohol. I stay off the prescription drugs. I'm 86 years old, but I'm not taking any what they call maintenance drugs. So I've met people who are much younger than I am, and they're on narcotics. And we've already mentioned this in my Being Healthy video from just a couple of days ago, right? I found that staying away from a doctor for me, is the best thing, because we have a very well-intentioned doctor who works very, very hard in a tiny, he's a private, and he spends most of his all of his working life, I think, in a tiny little cubicle where he dispenses whatever drugs people need. Drugs. And he gets really mad at me if I go to him and ask him anything. Like if I feel that I'm getting a little bit chesty, well, I'll book myself in, that was what I did a few times ago, for an x-ray. Because TB is something that is alive and well in the Philippines, but they got it handled, and if you get TB, you can be cured. And I think that our Talek Lake actually caught it early last year, and she went into hospital. They decided that's what it was. She went on medication and she's fine now. Okay, so I stay away from the hospitals, and I don't take prescription drugs. I'm currently taking something that sounds like a musician or a composer, and it's called ivermectin. I'm sure that you may have heard of that famous composer, ivermectin, and fenbendazole. I think that was either the Russian or the Italian. Fenbendazole sounds a little bit like pizza or something like that. Anyway, I'm on a course of that at my own decision. I didn't go to the doctor for that. I read up on it. I've seen incredible stories, which I don't mention here because if it contains the word beginning with K and ending with your, I might get a strike against me. Isn't it ironic? So that's what I'm doing right now. I take vitamins and all of that. I showed you the vitamins that I take, and I exercise. And one important thing, I control my thoughts. Oh my God, we're on 28 minutes. What else? Let me do it quickly. Don't do the resort. At your age, you should be ashamed of yourself. Or once I was caught digging the yard, somebody said with great intentions and the purest of heart, Terence, you shouldn't be doing that at your age. And well, I put under that, live within your means. We haven't got any debt. Does that count? Now, this one was a bad one. Stay in your lane. I mentioned that when I was a very young man and actually quite sprightly and athletic, I actually considered being a dancer. However, I had a visit with a friend of mine who was a dancer and was encouraging me to do that. He said, "Tell you could do that." And back then I was very, very athletic. Swimmer, cyclist, motorcyclist, and martial arts. So I was in very good shape then. And I thought that would be great. And he took me along to, I think it was called, it was a show called Charlie Girl. And him being a gay dancer, he knew most of the guys who were dancing in the chorus there. So we took him along. And I spent a few minutes in the dressing room, and it wasn't me. it seemed like everybody was gay. And they're all going, "Oh, darling!" And I'm not trying to do the gay thing, but I knew that I could never immerse myself for my working hours in that situation. Sorry about that. Anyway, vax murder. I've been accused of being totally irresponsible on subjects of the vax. Have I said that? Irresponsible? One man said, this is when I was not only running the channel, but with my wife, Beth, of course. I was actually building or remodeling the house that we lived in. And of course we were painting and all of that kind of stuff. And he said, "I think you've been sniffing too much of the thinners because you are being irresponsible and possibly leading to the death of people because they've died because they have taken your advice and not taken the vax." In view of what is happening now, we all stayed vax-free. Even my extended and Beth's family stayed out of that, and we're all doing pretty good. So the other one was a piece of advice. Why don't you sell your Raptor and give the money that you make on it to the poor? I suggested to him that maybe we could do a joint effort. I would raise some money and he could move into a smaller apartment, maybe a studio, and the money that he saves every week, he could indeed pay that to the poor. Even in America there are poor. Did you know that? I never heard from that guy, and I thought we were getting along so well. The other one was get a job. People would say to Beth, why don't you get a job? Even the people that we've worked so hard for, sending to college and all of that, and that some of them have said to Beth, "What did you do? What was your bachelor's?" And she said, "I have a bachelor's in marketing." I said, "Why don't you get a job?" I've gone on too long. Please listen to what you can. Make a comment. I've been loving the comments that we've had, especially on health and how everybody is getting on. And I always try to give a quality exchange, in exchange for what you send me, what you thought out. So, bye for now.